Look, foreclosures are up 20% right now. The economy's getting weaker. Home prices should be crashing through the floor. But here's the thing. They're actually still climbing. So let me break down what's really going on, because the headlines are completely missing the story. First, let's talk about what we're actually seeing with foreclosures. Yeah, they're going up. We're talking about 25,000 properties in October alone where lenders started foreclosure proceedings. That's 20% higher than October last year, and this has been happening for 8 months straight now. I get it, that sounds scary. But here's where everyone gets it wrong. They hear 20% and immediately think we're heading back to 2008. The problem is, nobody's looking at the actual numbers underneath that percentage. Think about it like this. If something goes up 20%, sure, that could be bad. But what if you're starting from a really, really small number? Then suddenly that 20% doesn't look so terrifying anymore. Right now, we've got about 0.5% of all mortgages in the country in foreclosure. 0.5%. That's actually lower than the historical average of 1.5%. Now, let's compare that to 2008. Back during the actual housing crash, we hit 4% of mortgages in foreclosure. So we're talking about 0.5% today versus 4% back then. That's literally 8 times lower than what actually crashed the market. When you look at the data over the past 20 years, you can see it clearly. In the mid-2000s, foreclosure started climbing and climbing year after year, building momentum before everything fell apart. The slope was getting steeper and steeper. But today, even though we're seeing these increases, the slope is almost flat. It's nothing like what happened back then. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Home prices are at about $440,000 across the country right now, and they're up 1.4% compared to last year, not down, up. So we've got rising foreclosures happening at the same time home prices are still going up. That doesn't make sense on the surface until you actually dig into what's going on. Here's the thing. Most people who own homes locked in their mortgage rates years ago when rates were way lower. About 20% of homeowners are sitting at rates below 3%. Another 32% are between 3 and 4%. And get this, 72% of all mortgage holders are locked in at 5% or below. So even if times are getting tough, most people can still handle their mortgage payments because their rates are old. They're not drowning. They're managing fine. On top of that, homeowners have built up huge amounts of equity because home prices have been going up for years. So if someone does hit a rough patch, they've got options. They can tap into their home equity. Is it ideal? No, but it beats getting foreclosed on. And that's a big reason why foreclosures aren't blowing up the way they would in an actual crash scenario. So if foreclosures aren't spiking the way they should be in a crash, what's actually keeping prices up? Supply. That's the real answer. That's what everyone's missing. Even though we've been building more homes since the pandemic, we're still way behind on supply. Freddie Mac says we're short about 3.7 million homes. JP Morgan says 3 to 4 million. The Federal Reserve agrees we're missing around 3 million units. This didn't just happen yesterday. After 2008, construction basically stopped for like a decade. We just never caught up after that. We're still playing catch-up. The shortage is expected to stick around until the end of the decade, so we're looking at another 5 to 7 years on average. But here's the key. It's totally different depending on where you are in the country. Down south, they're building faster. They think they'll catch up in about 3 years. Out west, it's slower, more like 6.5 years. But the Midwest and Northeast, they're basically saying this is just going to keep going. There's no real fix coming soon. It's going to be a problem for a while. This is why supply is everything. When you don't have enough homes for people to buy, prices don't crash. They stay up. Even when foreclosures go up, there still aren't enough houses on the market to flood it the way you'd need to crash prices. Let me put this in perspective. In 2010, there were just under 3 million foreclosed homes that hit the market in a single year, just 1 year. Now think about this. In all of 2024, only about 4 million homes were sold in the entire country. So imagine what 3 million distressed homes all at once did to the market. That wasn't a housing market anymore. That was a liquidation. Home prices dropped by over 30% nationwide. That's what an actual crash looks like. But we're not seeing that now. We don't have 3 million homes flooding the market. We've got a market where even the foreclosed homes get bought up because there just aren't enough houses, period. Now let's look at where this is actually hitting hardest, because location matters a ton. Florida's number one. They've got the highest foreclosure rate per housing unit. South Carolina's number two. Illinois is three. Delaware and Nevada round out the top five. When you look at Florida specifically, it makes sense why they're getting hit. Insurance costs have gone crazy there. Hurricane risk is real. A bunch of people moved there during the boom, and now things are cooling off. There's a ton of investor-owned properties concentrated in Florida. All that stuff adds up. The pressure builds. And when you look at the price map for Florida, you don't see much blue. Blue means prices are going up. It's mostly yellow and red. Prices stagnant or falling. Florida's definitely being hit harder than the rest of the country. But here's what matters. Look everywhere else on the map. The Midwest, the Northeast, most of it's blue. Prices are up, not huge jumps, but still up. When you add up the whole country, home prices overall are up 1.4% year over year. That's completely different from 2008. This time, most of the country is actually holding its ground. It's not a nationwide thing. It's pressure in specific regions. That's a huge difference. So what does this mean for you? Well, it depends on your situation. If you're thinking about buying, especially in the Midwest or Northeast, you're walking into a tight market that's still climbing. Location is everything. Florida and some parts of the South might actually give you buying opportunities where prices are falling or staying flat. But in most of the country, you're competing hard for limited houses at prices that keep going up. If you're selling, you probably have a ton of equity built up. Your house has likely gone way up since you bought it. That's a good position to be in. If you're looking to invest in distressed properties, there are deals out there, especially in states like Florida where foreclosure rates are higher. But don't think there's going to be some massive wave of cheap homes. It's more like a steady stream of opportunities in a market that doesn't have enough inventory. Here's one more thing that most people aren't thinking about. The Federal Reserve is probably going to start printing money again. More money means more inflation. And when inflation goes up, do you really think the housing market is going to crash? History says no. Inflation and rising home prices pretty much go together. They move in the same direction. So yeah, there might be some regional pullbacks. Some areas will cool off more than others. But a full-blown nationwide housing crash? That's not what the data's showing us. People have been saying a crash was coming since 2021. It hasn't happened. And when you look at everything we just went through, the supply shortage is massive, homeowner equity is huge, foreclosure rates are still way too low, the fundamentals just aren't there for a crash to happen. Supply is the real story. Follow the supply, not the fear, and you'll actually understand what's happening in the housing market. If this helped you figure things out, hit subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments.